And thank you very much for the opportunity to invite me to be part of this conversation today. I don't know whether can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. And the discussion today, all of you, the Commonwealth Student Union of Cameroon, the Commonwealth Year of the Youth couldn't have been more timely. And my invitation to engage you guys to have a conversation on this very important issue of the environment is something that I do appreciate. And so the Commonwealth Student Union of Cameroon, the government, patrons, and all representatives from the government, all the young people, and all protocols observed. Without much ado, let me get straight to the substance, starting off with this African proverb that tells us that an old man who wakes up very early in the morning and go to work was once a young man who slept a lot. This insightful African proverb is quite very timely for this conversation today and sends a sobering reminder that the challenges we see around the world today are challenges in which we can be able to solve. And those challenges cannot be discussed as if we do not have answers to them. Because the challenges we see around us today are as a result of failing to take opportunities that come our way. But even more profound yet, another alluded reminder which says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is now. And I say profound because it reminds us of the second chances that come for us to redeem ourselves from past mistakes and missteps. And the urgency of this redemption is exemplified by the adversity we face as a people across Africa and even Cameroon. I'm talking about food insecurity that, as we're speaking today, over 257 million African citizens go to bed hungry, the highest globally. And I'm talking about the chronic youth unemployment, especially among our young people, where over 70% of these young people in the continent are under the age of 30. I'm talking about these realities that we face as a continent, where 1 in 5 youth are idle. They are not in any employment. Some of them are not in education or any form of training. And this represents lost opportunities in good talents, in the abilities and aptitudes of these non-participant youth, and underpin the reason the value of an African remains undefined. Compounding these challenges are the 3 leading environmental crises of our time. And I'm talking of the changing climate that is already redefining the contours of our continent more dramatically than any other. And as we're speaking today, climate change is reducing the productive output of every African by up to 15% each and every year. I'm talking about ecological degradation across the continent, where Africa is losing up to $65 billion each and every year. And I'm talking about pollution, including air and plastic pollution, which is costing the continent over $400 billion each and every year. And Cameroon, as a country, is not immune to this adversity. Just last year, 3.9 million citizens of the country needed urgent humanitarian assistance, with over 60% of the entire population of Cameroon under the age of 25. They remain the most economically excluded. The data we have shows that over 70% of Cameroonian households depend on wood fuel, driving the loss of about 100,000 acres of forest each and every year. And this is compounding indoor pollution that is killing our citizens, our brothers and sisters, between 7,000 to 11,400 annually. And Cameroon is one of the countries that is most vulnerable in the entire world, with the climate change already affecting the GDP of Cameroon by 8%. And this is something that we cannot take for granted, because as a people and as citizens of the entire global community of Africa and even of Cameroon, we must own up and take responsibility. And conversations like these become more important, because we need to take responsibility to ensure that this disproportionate adversity resulting from our collective mistakes and neglect in planting the trees of inclusive, environmentally sustainable socio-economic growth, and embrace a second chance to redeem ourselves through the environmental lens. And here are the steps to be taken to redeem ourselves from this mishap. And the first step is that moving on from today, we must rethink the environmental action narrative in the African continent. I say this from where I sit and from what I see across the continent. A youth-led survey just last month actually showed something that was astonishing to me. This youth-led survey showed that the most significant climate change issue we face, the results were calibrated around what made it so funny to me in that it looked at traditional climate change narrative from a silo thinking. The majority answered that climate change, environmental crisis that we face today focuses mostly on the aspects of drought and floods. And no single individual actually looked at the component of the climate change discourse within the African continent, which is socioeconomics. And this one word, socioeconomics, is very, very important for you to understand. Only about 0.4% of those respondents in that survey actually showed the connection with the majority of the realities that the continent faces today. I say this because why climate change is global, Africa's disproportionate vulnerability is because of a low socioeconomic base. And because of this low socioeconomic base, we cannot be able to talk about climate change without talking about food on the table. Because if you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that child. And so the way out is for environmental action to be pitched as an investment opportunity and enterprise opportunity. For example, in the entire continent, and even in Cameroon, decentralizing simple climate action solutions of solar dryers and solar cool chains can help the country recoup over 200 million US dollars lost just in the tomato value chain and generate over 1.5 million jobs annually. Cameroon, as we're speaking today, is estimated to be actually releasing into the environment 600,000 tons of plastics. Only some plastics are recycled. Recycling just 80% can create a merit of enterprise opportunities. And we've seen young people across the continent that we're guiding, generating opportunities, incomes of up to $500 every month by collecting plastic waste, recycling it into pavement tiles, using simple tools and combining these opportunities to drive transformational development. But one of the aspects I'm bringing this up is that sometimes we complain about what is just in front of us. If you look at the agricultural waste that is littered in all farmlands, converting these agricultural waste into biofertilizer is a non-capital intensive that you don't necessarily need a lot of capital to start, but you'll be reaping a profit of over 500% and tap into a market of over 50% across the continent. The same is replacing charcoal, where as we speak, over 70% of households in Cameroon use charcoal. But turning agricultural waste into simple fuel briquettes just need you to avail yourself to learn a skill. So the environmental action narrative must change from being projected as a liability to an opportunity for socioeconomics. And that takes me to the second point, which is very, very important. We must complement government in whatever thing we do. I'm sure that if I was to ask each of you here, the kind of incentives and policies and legislations that the Cameroon government has put forward, most of you will tell me you don't know, or only a few of you will say you know. But yet, just last year, Cameroon was in the headlines across the entire globe for taking the bold step, the first country in the continent of slashing taxes to drive investments in the solar power sector for the next 10 years. Cameroon has prioritized increased investments in biodigested in the nationally determined contribution by up to 10%. These are supposed to guide you, the young people, into areas in which you can focus on and establish how you can devise solutions that enhance the implementation of these policy provisions. And in so doing, establish specific gaps you need to be addressed through policy legislation and the incentives that need to be put in place, and lobby your own MPs, your legislators, to have them addressed. This is what I call smart politics on your part as citizens. And the third aspect is skills retooling. Let me tell you this. Your biggest premium is your skill. It's not because you're a Cameroonian or from any African country that will matter to anybody when you pitch yourself in the global stage. It is what you can offer. It is not how you look. It is not which province you come from. It is what you can offer. And up to 70% of Africans and Cameroonians are below the age of 30. And this has been labeled as demographic dividend for Africa. But my question has always been, what is demographic dividend when you have not invested? How do you get a dividend when you have not invested? Without an investment, there will be no demographic dividend. And so the investment that is needed urgently, especially for the Cameroonian young people, and you, the Commonwealth student union is to retool your skills. And this must become not just a buzzword, but it must become a reality where you improve, refine, and align your skills and talent, regardless of which subject you study, to tap enterprise opportunities that can be unlocked from implementing environmental actions as I've described above. And this is the essence of what I call innovative volunteerism, which is simply the ability for each and every one of us to avail ourselves into the opportunity space and start to turn our passions into profits. And that is how we can do it by learning new skills on how some of these solutions can actually be devised and utilizing social media spaces to learn not to abuse people and complain. And lobby your lawmakers to have curriculums at all levels, from primary to tertiary institutions, including village polytechnics, to prioritize trainings on the enterprise dimension of the environment. That takes me to the fourth point. You must refresh your perception of the Commonwealth. I'm a Cameroonian, and proudly so. The Commonwealth was founded in the 1931s and a generation ago to promote peace and prosperity among member states. As of today, the Commonwealth's 56 member countries have a combined population of 2.5 billion citizens, of which over 60% are under the age of 30. Young people are the majority in the Commonwealth, and it is high time you leverage these numbers to push progressive reforms in the area of trade. Cumulatively, as we're discussing today, the combined wealth in the Commonwealth, in terms of assets, is estimated at 150 trillion US dollars. A portion of just these assets at 1% can be deployed to finance youth-driven environmental action solutions. As I discussed earlier, the combined GDP of the entire Commonwealth countries is 14.5 trillion US dollars, which represents a consolidated market that an action through the environmental lens in Cameroon can find a market in some of these countries. And through forums like these today, such as your Commonwealth Students Union, you must be able to leverage these structures to lobby for such changes, leveraging your collective strengths in numbers as Commonwealth. That takes me to the fifth point, which is your passion. Your passion is the biggest currency. Purposeful passion to do right is the biggest currency that is needed to devise solutions that touch many lives. Internal drive in each and every one of us. Because if you throw ideas, ponder the money and nothing moves. But give ideas to somebody who is passionate and he will turn those ideas into profitable solutions and transformational calls. For quite a very long time, we've been told that when we don't have money, nothing happens. That's a lie. And that's the biggest fallacy and the biggest lie of the 21st century. We must be able to leverage that internal flame in each and every one of us. Identify an area of need that you can focus your energies on and look to perfect the solution you offer. The sixth point that is very important that I like you people to understand is that climate and mental health today narrative is demonstrating the intrinsic strength of the African continent. We hear of mental health. Yes, it happens. But the nexus of climate change and mental health is a globally emerging area that you guys need to take serious note. But what I see is that despite being the most disproportionate continent impacted by the changing climate with minimal coping means, Africa accounts for the least, about 9% of the global burden of depressive disorder. This tells us one thing that we don't even discuss as Africans. We like complaining, right? We get pleasure in complaining, but nothing gets changed. Let me have news for you today. The disproportionate impacts of climate change in the African continent at the same time shows that only 9% of the global burden of depressive disorder is in this continent. What does this tell us? It tells us that Africans are a resilient people. It tells us that Africans are a hopeful people. It tells us that Africans are positive, forward-looking people to a brighter tomorrow despite the extreme difficulty of adversity. And we must urgently today tap into this wide-scale positivity as a fuel to advance socio-economic transformation as we leverage environmental solutions. Engage your communities through cooperatives, through Njangis, and nurture them to a market for your own sustainability solutions. Give back to community as a citizen by incorporating what you do and tap them within your supply chain. That takes me to the seventh point, which is an aspect that is not discussed in the continent. I'm a Cameroonian, and proudly so. And I owe every debt to the country and to my village, where I come from. Because I grew up with the values that are still leveraged today. And these values were values of taking initiative. So the seventh point is for each and every one of us to develop commitment, initiative, and attitude. The attitude of sitting and thinking that things will come us is a terrible attitude. And I don't blame it on our young people today. I blame it because our upbringing was never to allow us to discuss issues sometimes. We're allowed sometimes to wait for things. And what I'm telling you today is that the qualities that you need in the world today to withstand not just adversity, to market only not your environmental solutions, is to set yourself apart in a world overflowing with skills and experience by adopting that attitude of taking initiative. These are the tools you will need to survive. These are the tools you will need to strive. These are the tools you will need to lead the way. And they will shape you into beacons of inspiration. And they will guide you and others through the storms of life. So cultivate the trait of taking initiative. Cultivate the trait of doing things not because you've been asked to do, because you are doing it not just to fulfill a mission, but to solve problems. And by doing that, you will stand out. That takes me to the 8th point. We must not fear failure. In the solution space, we were never taught to fail. Neither were we taught that when we fail, the most important aspect we need to take from it is to learn from the failure. Setbacks should become our stepping stones for a comeback. Setbacks are not drawbacks. They give us lessons, because if you don't know, if you don't fail, you cannot know. And if you don't know, you cannot grow. And if you cannot grow, you cannot develop. So always remember that the path is not always going to be easy, and you have to fail. You face difficulties. You will make mistakes. You will fault and sometimes deviate from your intended course. That's okay. However, these moments are not setbacks, as I've said, but they are opportunities for you to learn. Because winners are failures who never quit, and mistakes and failures are the beginning of success. Regardless of what you engage in, build this type of mindset, and you will overcome any difficulty you come across in your entire life. Because remember this today, success is only 1% ideas and 99% doing. And the last point, I think I'll pause here a little bit. We are people that are so hopeful. But my question has always been, how can you be hopeful for things to happen when you are not acting? How do you build a house without a foundation? If you don't act, it means you don't believe in yourself. And that self-belief is called faith. So the 9th point is to have faith and hope. Faith is what sparks each and every one of us to urge ourselves to action, knowing fully well that there will be no change unless we act. And hope then comes into fuel to sustain us to continuously act with what we need to do. So without having the faith to start doing something, even when we don't have, to engage and learn from people and volunteer and voluntarily volunteer ourselves to learn, without cultivating that attitude and only hoping that tomorrow will be better when we're not playing our role today, is a fallacy and will not change anything. And I'm challenging each and every one of you today, Commonwealth Student Union of Cameroon, to liberate this spirit, because that is the only way that our shared story will not be that of competition, but that of cooperation, because we need to understand that a single bracelet does not jingle. So when all is said and done, the trigger that will set each and every one of us apart in this sojourn of environmental solutions, as we redeem ourselves, is what I call the 2 stones of aspects. And the first aspect is that of discipline. Let me tell you, if you cannot be disciplined, you cannot be able to create a transformational pathway, even though you are leveraging environmental solutions. Discipline is very, very important. It's the ability to be able to reject distractions. Because rejecting distractions is important. Discipline is the ability to endure a level of uncomfortability in applying yourself to the areas that I've mentioned that you can be able to tap in the environmental space. And this is indispensable. On the flip side, having a high affinity for disruption and distraction is what I see with many young people today. And that's a recipe for retrogression. You have to make a choice today. And I advise you, as your brother, to choose the path of enduring short-term pain for long-term gain in actioning the environmental solutions that I've mentioned. Because if we don't, we will banish ourselves to the sheer fate of that of a grasshopper. We slept forgetfully and finally end up in the mouth of a lizard. The lizard I'm talking about are the worsening adversity of food insecurity, of a youth of employment in our own country. And that is where I think you can be able to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. for that thoughtful insight. It's no doubt we knew that you were the right person to start the opening session of this, our environmental conference. And just briefly, we have a question for you before you go. We have just one question for you before you go. I just want to do a summary of the things that I grabbed from what you said. And the most important thing from what you said is that we cannot talk about climate and the environment without talking about how to put food on the table. And that is important for young people to identify and reach an area of interest, strike the objective, and work towards it. For there is money in ideas. The success is in the 1% of ideas. Thank you very much for your time. Kotem, the question for Dr.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for accepting our invitation. I'll have a short question for you. On behalf of the union, the Commonwealth Student Union, please, can you enlighten us, maybe in some few sentences, some opportunities when it comes to environmental protection? What are the opportunities that are out there for young people which they can actually exploit? Because there are so many of them following you online who want to know the pathways which they will use in order to be able to make a change in their community, maybe by a small grant or maybe by community volunteerism. What are some of these openings? Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, there are a lot of openings, and I did take the initiative to create what is called an ecosystem-based adaptation for food security assembly with a tool called innovative volunteerism, of which Cameroon is one of them. So the first opportunity is for you to go and register on www.innovativevolunteerism.ibafosa.org, and you'll be guided, because in Cameroon, working with state and non-state actors, we have a lot of young people who have been trained to be able to train others to turn agricultural waste into fuel briquettes, into biofertilizer, and even into biogas. In Yaoundé, where you are, in Verde, we are working with non-state actors, and people have voluntarily volunteered and built the first biodigester that is producing biogas for communities there. So opportunities are there, but the willingness of each and individual, which I like the question you asked, is to then be able to avail yourself in these spaces and be willing to then get guided so that at least you can join the winning team, not only for Cameroon, but across the continent. And I'm here to guide, and I look forward to see how I can be able to connect each and every one of you. But just the last aspect, I think engagement in community is not just in terms of the practical action that you can take. It is also in inspiring young people so they can see themselves as solutions and become part of community initiatives in taking environmental solutions. And so if, as the Commonwealth Student Union of Cameroon, each of you can take an oath today that regardless of where you come from, you are going to ensure that every village and community have also a Commonwealth instead of student union, of youth unions, then be able to drive environmental transformation. You people will change Cameroon and Africa and have a model. Food for thought. Over.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the beautiful insight. We have the numbers as young people. We have the numbers as young people. And I think that if we use our numbers and our ideas, we can inspire ourselves first. And from there, we can build the kind of Africa, the kind of Cameroon, and the kind of world that we need presently. We thank you very much for your time, and we hope to connect with you sometime later. As we already said, this year happens to be the particular year we have decided as young people to plant more trees. That's our own way of contributing to nature protection and the environment. It's a pleasure having you, Doctor. We wish you a very beautiful day as you